Bishop Dag Heward-Mills Ministries. Discover how God can change your life forever.
There are two kinds of volunteers, passive and active. The passive volunteer says, Lord, here am I. Next year, he says it again. And 5 years later, he is saying it once more, Lord, I am still here. I tell you, there are two types of volunteers. One of them says, Lord, here I am. Next year, he says it again. Lord, here am I. 5 years later, he is saying once more, Lord, I am still here. Here he is, here he was, and here he always will be. He has an idea that he has to wait until he hears a supernatural voice or until God reaches down, picks him up, and transplants him to some foreign land. God cannot use passive volunteers. I tell you. The active volunteer, we are talking about passive volunteers and active volunteers. The active volunteer says, Lord, here am I, send me. He puts a goal into his volunteering and sets his face like flint. He prays through hindrances and overcomes obstacles. By faith, he opens closed doors, prays in or earns the money he needs for his training and gets his preparation. Finally, he finds himself ready for his life's work. Then he applies to a mission board. And if he is turned down, then he applies to another. Yeah, he applies. At last, he is accepted. Then he prays in his outfit and passage money. And finally, after overcoming every obstacle, he reaches the field. Nothing is allowed to stand in his way. God can use active volunteers. Give the Lord a shout of praise. How may he know the will of God? How can he be sure of his call? He will pray, and as he prays, if he is not called, the burden will lift and he will be at rest. But if he is called, the burden will get heavier and heavier until, like Jeremiah, he will feel as it were a fire burning in his bones, and he will say, I cannot contain. The fire urge will be upon him and he will have to go. Satan will do everything in his power to hinder, if he can, and he often does. He will bring him in contact with a young woman who has no intention of being a missionary. Hey! Sit down. You sit down. Sit down. Sit down. Yeah, I decided not to. When I saw that, I said, oh, I will just come and read because I don't have anything to add. I don't have anything constructive to add to what I'm reading. Satan will do everything in his power to hinder. If he can, and he often does, he will bring him in contact with a young woman who has no intention of being a missionary, or vice versa. Many a young woman who is called of God never gets to the mission field simply because she marries a man who is going to remain at home. And thus her life is wrecked. She gets out of God's will and Satan wins. Yeah. Many young women who are called, that's the end of their ministry. Marry a man and then that's the end of the call. Others will be kept at home by unwilling parents. Parents are to be obeyed, but only in the Lord. God comes first. Some children have been disinherited because they have gone. Spiritual parents will not stand in the way. Satan must not be allowed to hinder. Then there is the question of health. If Satan can keep the candidate in ill health, he will have gained his purpose. It is up to the prospective missionary to see that proper exercise is taken so as to be physically fit for the field. Cases have been known of workers who have been turned down by doctors, who have through exercise and care conquered every infirmity and then have been able to serve for many years. The missionary must be in the best of health. Preparation for the foreign field should commence by a study of the biographies of the great pioneers of missionary work. Those who expect to labor in other lands should know as much as they can about those who have gone before. And the best way is by securing the biographies of noted missionaries who laid the foundations. If you, my friend, expect to go, I would suggest that you get the life of David Livingstone of Africa and read it until the inspiration of his heroic achievements grips you, stirs you, and moves you to emulate his devotion and consecration. Then read the life story of Robert Moffat, his father-in-law, who spent 50 years in Africa with but one fellow. Fellow means the time they come back home. Follow these with Alexander Mackay of Uganda. Nor should Mary Slessor of Africa be forgotten. Those of you who went to Achimota School, Slessor House, named after this woman, Mary Slessor. This will give you the knowledge you need of Africa. Turning to China, study the life of J. Hudson Taylor, founder of the China Inland Mission, especially a retrospect. And of course, Robert Morrison, the pioneer of Chinese missions. For a vision of India, read William Carey, the father of modern missions, and Alexander Duff. And then Henry Martin of Persia, Adoniram Judson of Burma, and James Gilmore of Mongolia should be obtained and studied. And of course, John G. Patton of the New Hebrides, and James Chalmer of New Guinea, and John Williams of the South Sea Islands, and Samuel Marsden of New Zealand. All these. Be sure to read The Splendor of God by Morrow. It is a masterpiece. And then to 1,000 Miles of Miracles by Glover.